Hello, this is Tyler versus Hennepin County, Supreme Court case decided in 2023. What are the questions in this case? The first question is the equity that remains after a tax sale protected by the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment? And the second question, is the taking of equity that remains after a tax sale a violation of the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment? I want to point out this was one of the more important cases decided by the court in 2022-2023 term. And as far as media coverage, it was a little bit over the radar, overshadowed by the affirmative action case and the free speech case. I'm talking about Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard and 303 Creative versus Elanis, respectively. But this case is also important, and I will endeavor to show that, in fact, it has potentially significant impact on lots and lots of ordinary people around the country. So the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution reads as follows: "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." And the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment reads, "Nor excessive fines imposed." The holding by the Supreme Court of the United States was unanimous when it comes to the takings clause. The court said that any equity that is left over after a tax sale is in fact protected by the Fifth Amendment. And as far as the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment, the court as an institution did not reach a decision on that question, and Justice Gorsuch wrote a concurring opinion in which Justice Jackson joined, arguing that, in fact, taking remaining equity after tax liability had been satisfied really is an excessive fine, irrespective of the stated intentions of the government. So if the government takes any equity in your home after it sells your real estate for non-payment of local real estate taxes, it must return that equity to you. What are the facts of this case? Geraldine Tyler moved to a seniors community from the condominium which she owned. So between 2009 and 2015, no one paid property taxes on this condominium. So past taxes, interest, and fees added up to approximately $15,000. Hennepin County seized her title, took the physical possession of the condo, and then sold it for $40,000. The county kept the $25,000 difference. That's the equity that was left over after the sale, instead of returning that equity to Geraldine Tyler. So Minnesota, 13 other states, and Washington, D.C. have laws that allow state or local government to keep equity that remains after a tax sale. And it was this law that Tyler tried to overcome. So she filed a lawsuit in a district court, and she argued the takings clause was violated and the excessive fines clause was violated. The district court dismissed her case for failure to state a claim. Basically, the court said, you have no interest in the condominium that the county seized. Why? Because the state law says so. If you haven't paid your taxes, we take it over, and that's a regulatory action, and we sell your home. And they also dismissed her excessive fines clause argument, saying that the reason why the government keeps this equity is not punitive, but more kind of a deterrence. It's preventive. So it's not meant to punish. So she appealed to a court of appeals. The Eighth Circuit Court denied her appeal for the same reason, and she appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States. So what did the United States Supreme Court argue? Unanimously, it stated that property interest cannot be left up to the state law to define. So state law may be just one source of property interest, but there are also other sources like traditional property law principles. And the court went into some detail showing that going as far back as Magna Carta, 1215, and going as far back as American colonial history, the principle was that if any equity is left over, you must return it. If any equity from any sale is left over, you must return it. And in fact, you cannot ever take more, as government, you cannot take more than is due to you in terms of the debt that's legally owed. You cannot take more than the debt. So there's traditional property law principles, the historical practice, and the Supreme Court's own precedents. All of these factors have to be taken into consideration, and the state alone may not decide to define away the takings clause protection. So the Supreme Court also rejected Hennepin County's argument that secondary liens on Tyler's home negated her property interest in her condo. It also chided the county for not even submitting evidence of such secondary liens to the court. So what happens typically is if you are in default of local property taxes, the local government gets priority in terms of possession. And if there are secondary lien holders, and apparently there are in this case, because she owed money on her mortgage, she owed money to the homeowners association. So there are at least two other secondary lien, there are at least two other lien holders, but they're down in priority by comparison to Hennepin County. So what the court is saying, it's saying that this doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that she owes money connected with this property to others. This fact does not permit the county to seize the surplus equity. And second, the court said, well, you did not even submit to us the proof of these secondary liens. So the Supreme Court also rejected Hennepin County's argument that Tyler abandoned her property because the court said that there's no evidence for it. She did not explicitly indicate anywhere that she was abandoning her property. The simple non-payment of property taxes is not sufficient to establish abandonment. So Geraldine Tyler won this particular case. Now, why is the case important? The court's ruling is a significant victory for property rights. The ruling also defied the traditional conservative-liberal split that you typically see on property rights cases. Property rights cases in recent decades tended to go along the 5-4 or 6-3 splits. In this case, however, we see that conservatives' focus on private property rights is combined with liberals' focus on protecting individuals against powerful artificial persons like government, corporations, etc. So this is a big victory, particularly for owners of residential real estate, because it adds a layer of protection and peace of mind. If you cannot pay your property taxes, and worst comes to worst, your local government seizes your home and sells it, it must return any equity that's left over to you. It cannot keep it, irrespective of any arguments that it wants to give as a rationalization. Big victory for the common person, a loss for heavy-handed government involvement in people's lives and attempts to steal regular people's equity. Thank you for your attention.